My name is Ruby, and I'm 47 years old. Ever since I got married, I've been taking care of my husband, who had never lifted a finger when it came to household chores. I met Max, who was turning 50 this year, at the hospital where I worked. It started as a typical nurse-patient relationship. When he was discharged, he asked me out. Max was not only good-looking and well-spoken, but also knew how to treat a woman. Back then, I was still quite naive and fell for him instantly. Our marriage started smoothly, but unfortunately, we couldn't have children, and our conversations dwindled as the years passed. Nevertheless, we continued to go out for special dinners to celebrate birthdays and anniversaries. We weren't overly affectionate, just an ordinary middle-aged couple. But lately, things had changed. Max had been coming home late for the past few months, even working on weekends. Our precious quality time as a couple was disappearing. As I stood in the kitchen, I let out a disapproving sigh. I checked my phone, which had no notifications. Max appeared tech-savvy with his smartphone, but in reality, he was somewhat behind and used a senior-friendly phone with messaging apps, email, and call functions. His recent absence didn't mean I could go ahead and finish my dinner without worry. He would surely ask, "Where's my dinner?" On the other hand, if I prepared food and waited for him, I'd end up having dinner twice. It was a dilemma. I didn't want to complain to a husband who came home exhausted from work. It was just a bit disheartening to have leftovers for my lunch the next day when I had cooked it with love and care for him. One day, I decided to go shopping using the car, which was typically Max's private property. He used it for work on weekdays and sometimes on weekends, so I rarely had a chance to drive it. Strangely, he was at home that day. While he was still asleep, I planned to drive to a supermarket that was having a big sale far out of town. I turned on the car's navigation system, was taken aback by the list of previous locations. Cafe Kitty and Sunrise Aquarium? Wait a minute, I had never been to those places, and it had been a month since I last used the car. Cold sweat trickled down my spine as I discovered many other locations that didn't seem work-related. I took a shaky picture of the screen. It was 8 a.m., and Max was still in a deep slumber, snoring away. This was my only chance. Drawing inspiration from my favorite crime scene investigator characters from crime dramas, I pretended to be one and carefully checked under the car seat. To my shock, I found a long strand of curly brown hair and a tiny gold earring wedged in a crack. It couldn't be mine. I kept my hair short, and neither Max nor I had our ears pierced. My hands trembled as I tried to calm myself. I took a picture of the evidence. Max had returned home quite drunk from a business entertainment event around 1 a.m. It was my window of opportunity. Feeling too anxious to go shopping, I canceled my plans and returned to the house, pretending as if nothing had happened. I started cooking, trying to hide my turmoil. It had been 20 years since I became a housewife, mastering everything Max wanted me to do. Preparing breakfast, ironing his shirts and handkerchiefs, polishing his leather shoes every night, and cooking a healthy dinner. Yet he had betrayed me. I felt humiliated and couldn't believe it. A short while later, Max woke up. "Good morning. Smoothie bowl or eggs and bacon?" I asked. He replied, "I had too much to drink last night, so I'll have a smoothie bowl." I served breakfast and left the newspaper on the dining table while he read it with the TV's background noise. I went through the trouble of preparing 2 different meals, all the while concealing the turmoil in my heart. I had been such a good wife. The morning played out like any other. I sat across from him, feigning composure. Can I borrow the car today? I want to go to a supermarket out of town for a big sale." "Are you sure?" he asked, concern in his voice. "You haven't driven in a while." "I'll be fine. I'll use the navigation," I assured him. He hesitated. "I don't trust you." "I'll go instead," I said, smiling at his cautious tone. "Let's go together then." "Okay," he agreed. "I'll clean the car after I finish here." He folded the newspaper haphazardly and hurriedly finished his breakfast. I watched him rush out of the house still wearing his night robe, waiting for the front door to close. Then I placed the strand of hair and the tiny earring in a Ziploc bag, labeling it with the date and time, and hid it in the back of the cupboard. That day, I went out with Max for the first time in months. The car was immaculate, not a speck of dust in sight. When I checked the navigation, the history had been deleted. I decided to let it go this time due to lack of evidence, but I was determined that there wouldn't be a second time. I found myself glaring at Max, who had strangely been nicer to me lately. Things remained peaceful for the next few weeks until my birthday, when the unexpected occurred. "Tonight, Max, you're getting off work early, and we're having dinner together. I booked a table at the French restaurant in the mall for 8:30. Don't be late." I reminded him as I prepared breakfast. He responded with a half-hearted groan, probably due to lack of sleep from coming home late again the previous night. Since the shopping incident, he had started letting me know when he would be late. Though I no longer had a dilemma about his dinner, his consistent lateness raised concerns about his health due to overwork. That evening, I dressed up and headed to the restaurant, located about 15 minutes away by taxi on the quiet upper floor of the mall. I sat by a large window, facing the parking lot, and sent Max a text. There was no response. After waiting for 30 minutes, I decided to call him. It took a while for him to answer, and when he did, he sounded annoyed. "Yeah, what's up?" "Hey, where are you?" "I texted that I was waiting for you at the restaurant." "Oh, my bad. I'm swamped at work and can't make it." "What? What do you mean?" "You always make it on time for special occasions. You could have let me know earlier if you couldn't make it." I could hear the irritation in my voice. He clicked his tongue as if celebrating his wife's birthday was a bother. "I didn't even have time for that. I'm working. Unlike you, who's at home doing whatever you like. Anyway, I can't leave tonight. Cancel the dinner. Got it? Bye." "Wait a minute." I tried to stop him, but he had already hung up on me. It wasn't just any day, it was my birthday. Reluctantly, I called the waiter over, explained the situation, and told him I would pay for the pre-booked course. He kindly suggested I have dinner alone and pay only for myself. As I contemplated this, my phone received a text from Max. "Could you cancel?" The message was one line, devoid of an apology. I replied with a bitter tone, "Yeah, just your cart," and then turned to the waiter. "I'll take you up on your suggestion, please. Even if I return home now, there wouldn't be anything to eat." Since it was a typical Wednesday, the restaurant was only half full. I decided to savor my birthday French dinner alone in silence, with plans to later share my thoughts and pictures on social media. I have been scrolling through it almost daily, and that's precisely how it was meant to be used. Max had no interest or knowledge in social media, which was frustrating at times, but I was grateful in that moment that he wasn't tech-savvy in general. I savored each bite of the exquisite course, trying to wash away my frustration. My gaze wandered out the window, slightly tipsy, as I watched the cars in the parking lot. Suddenly, I spotted a familiar car, Joan's car. A stranger approached it, and in the next few seconds, I was completely shocked by what unfolded before my eyes. An elegantly dressed young woman with a grocery eco bag and long curly hair got into the car as if it were the most natural thing. The alcohol in me seemed to evaporate in an instant. I hurried to record the scene on my phone, but it was too late. The car drove away in the opposite direction of our home. That direction led to a strip of bars, an old bowling alley, and even a motel. My anger started to boil. It was a moment that transformed the vague suspicions into clear evidence. My phone received a notification. Max wrote, "I'll be back in 2 hours." It was a message I'd seen before, but having witnessed what I did, it only fueled my anger further. I should have made him regret it the other day. It was my mistake for giving him the benefit of the doubt. I quickly settled the bill and hailed a taxi home. I tried calling Max several times, but he never answered. I sent him a text urging him to come home soon. As soon as I returned to the house, I threw my phone onto the sofa and waited. Finally, he arrived, carrying his usual demeanor and handing me a supermarket eco bag. "Hey, sorry I missed the dinner. This is for you." Inside the bag was a discounted piece of cake. Under normal circumstances, I might have appreciated it, but at that moment, I was more focused on the video footage. "What were you doing?" "Huh?" I demanded. "I was working." "What kind of work involves picking up a young woman and driving away?" "What?" I threw the bag with the cake back at him and rushed to retrieve the Ziploc bag from the cupboard, shoving it into his hands. "I found these in your car. You were cheating on me. I want a divorce." He appeared flustered, but I was resolute in my pursuit of the truth. However, his response left me stunned. "What are you talking about? Where's your proof?" "What?" "Here, this is it." And he shouted at me, his tone aggressive. I flinched and he smirked, seemingly believing he had won. "I guess these are from a collie I gave a ride to once. I'm asking if you have evidence that I'm having an affair. I saw unusual histories on your car's navigation. I even took a picture of it, and I saw you tonight. I only canceled your part and had my dinner there. I saw your car picking up a woman from the restaurant's parking lot." He deliberately let out a long sigh. "What you saw in the navigation was me looking for a place to take you, and the car you saw tonight wasn't mine." "Yes, it was. Show me your proof." "If you're so insistent, you must have a picture, right?" "No." I hesitated, and he slammed his hand against the wall. "You become hysterical and accuse me of cheating when I'm exhausted from work, and you even disrespect me for doing what I can. How can you act this way without concrete evidence? You should be ashamed of yourself." His outburst left me speechless. Seeing me stunned, he sat back on the sofa as if he had said his piece. "I'm not giving you a divorce. I want to take a bath. Get to it now, and don't forget to polish my shoes." I sighed in resignation, realizing it was pointless to argue with him. As soon as I turned my back to him, I heard him chuckling. The 20 years we had built together were now falling apart, and my feelings toward Max were gradually turning cold. All I could feel was anger and frustration as I silently carried out the tasks he had demanded. And then, when he had fallen asleep, I packed some essentials, took a spare key to the car, and left the house. The dawn had broken when I arrived at my parents' house. I explained my situation to them, and they welcomed me back without a single question. A few hours after I had settled in, Max called me. "You? Where are you? You're the worst wife, just taking off like that. This wouldn't have happened if you weren't having an affair." "Drop it. I'm not divorcing you," I replied with a steely resolve. "Come back now. You were supposed to take care of me for the rest of your life." Something inside me snapped. I had been nothing more than a useful servant to him. He could call the affair whatever he wanted, but he had no right to meddle with it. If he didn't want to come clean, I had a plan. I was going to make him regret not taking responsibility for his actions. "Okay, I will get a lawyer. You'll hear from him soon." I hung up before he could say anything. I wasn't going to let him off easily at this point. It made no sense not to demand alimony for his adultery. I gripped my phone tightly and called a private detective agency. A few weeks later, the day of the arbitration arrived. I had prepared meticulously with my lawyer, while Max had decided to represent himself. It was a significant turn of events for me. He probably assumed he could pressure me into submission like he had the other day, but I wasn't going to let that happen. I knew his way with words better than anyone else. Although the arbitrator was supposed to remain impartial, who knew if Max would try to influence her? I willingly faced him. He appeared disheveled at the meeting, with wrinkled clothes and unpolished shoes. It seemed his mistress wasn't proficient in housekeeping, as I had suspected. The moment he spotted me, he called out my name desperately and professed his love for me. Perhaps living alone had affected his judgment, and it was quite the performance. The arbitrator was taken aback and observed him for a moment. When I subtly signaled her to intervene, she finally silenced Max. She requested that I present my case first, but it was Max who eagerly spoke up. I gently stopped the arbitrator, who was trying to quiet him. He declared his love, faithfulness, and denial of cheating. He insisted that we always celebrated our anniversary with a special dinner. Max's tearful plea was mixed with some truth, making it sound somewhat believable. I found it rather annoying. When the arbitrator had finished with Max, she turned to me. "Now, can you please present your case?" There was an element of falsehood in Max's claims, particularly his denial of adultery. I had done my best to take care of him, and his adultery was a betrayal. "I'm asking for a divorce, that's all. I told you I never cheated on you." "You better prove it," Max challenged. "I'm ready to provide the evidence. Firstly, please take a look at this. It's a printout of the car navigation histories that initially aroused my suspicion," I said, showing her the printout. I also discovered a strand of hair and a piercing in the car on the same day. Max smirked at the evidence as the arbitrator observed him. I turned my PC screen toward them both. This is a social media account belonging to Max's mistress. It appears he has concealed his marital status from her, so she has been posting about every outing they've had together. Joan's smirk faded, and the arbitrator reached out to my PC. "May I?" "Sure, please." I allowed the arbitrator to scroll through the page as she inspected the posts. It was a lucky guess on my part. I realized that most of the car navigation histories pointed to photogenic spots. I thought there might be pictures of Max and his mistress in the background, so I searched social media with a glimmer of hope. At that point, I didn't have the courage to contact a private detective. I was just looking for any proof. As I had anticipated, sifting through the vast amount of data took up a significant chunk of my time as a housewife. However, my persistence paid off when I finally stumbled upon an account that seemed to be linked to Max's mistress. There was a telling post with a comment that caught my attention. "Went for a drive with my mature boyfriend. I'm sad to lose my piercing though. Let me know if someone finds it." The post even included a picture of the same piercing I had discovered in the car. The owner of the account had the same hairstyle and coat that she wore when I had first seen her. There were other posts that aligned perfectly with the car navigation history, along with some images featuring a figure that resembled Max, although his face was not visible. It was unmistakably his mistress. Unfortunately for Max, by this point, I had already hired a detective. Upon discovering this damning evidence, Max attempted to downplay the situation, saying, "This is not an affair. It's strictly a business relationship on my side. She's the one who misunderstood the situation." I paid no heed to his excuses and proceeded to present more evidence. Dozens of pictures from my detective were laid out on the table, leaving Max with no room for excuses or justifications. It seemed Max had taken full advantage of my absence. I had heard that it was remarkably easy to capture him in compromising situations such as entering motel rooms, visiting his mistress at her residence, and even bringing her into our own home. Among the incriminating photos, one image stood out to me: a 50-year-old middle-aged man wearing a collar and leash, being enthusiastically led around by a young woman in a park. I couldn't help but mutter "wolf" as I showed the image. The arbitrator visibly expressed her disgust, and each time Max tried to reach for the incriminating nighttime walk photo, I revealed another, taken from various angles. I locked eyes with him and playfully said, "Woof, woof, stop it. They're not for your entertainment, so should I send these to your office?" Max's face turned red, and he trembled with shock and humiliation. It was clear he was at a loss for words. From that moment on, the arbitration proceeded in a more dignified manner. In addition to the division of property, it was decided that I would receive a substantial alimony payment as compensation for his long-standing betrayal. I had expected this outcome, and after all was settled, Max blurted out his intentions. "I will grant you a divorce. Even after paying you all that, I still have a house. I intend to marry my young and attractive girlfriend. We'll lead a simple life, and she will gradually learn to manage the household." I couldn't help but respond with disbelief. "What are you talking about?" "She's leaving you," I continued. "When she posted about the relationship on social media, it's evident that she's dating you without knowing you're married. I mean, who would boldly pose like that if they knew their boyfriend was married?" I had easily obtained her contact information through social media and had reached out to her through the detective even before the arbitration. Max had deceived her by claiming that he had a girlfriend he wanted to leave and had concealed his marital status. He had only wanted to flaunt his relationship to the public, boasting about his mature boyfriend to elevate his societal status. Well, if she knew the truth, she wouldn't have posted on social media. But that doesn't change the fact that she attempted to steal a man away from another woman. She had threatened to expose the truth on her social media, vowing never to see him again. No way, I thought to myself. The arbitrator then concluded, "We're done here." I shook hands with her and gracefully exited the room, leaving Max with a pale and defeated expression. Later on, I received information about Max and his mistress from my private detective. Instead of garnering sympathy from her followers, her adultery was exposed and she faced severe backlash when the truth came out. Even people close to her discovered the reality of her actions, making it uncomfortable for her to continue working. Her previous apartment suddenly became vacant as she disappeared without a trace. Max, on the other hand, couldn't afford the sum for alimony and spousal support, so he sold the house and moved into a small, unkempt apartment. His life had become disheveled, his appearance filthy, and the stench of garbage emanated from his living quarters. Consequently, his colleagues distanced themselves from him, and his bosses were so disgusted that he was demoted and relegated to a dark corner of the office. From what I heard, it seemed like he would be working even beyond his retirement. As for me, I managed to secure a job at a small hospital near my parents' house. Having a 20-year gap in my employment history was a significant challenge, especially with the latest equipment, but I was fortunate to have supportive and understanding colleagues, and I was leading a fulfilling life. I used the alimony to renovate my parents' house for their future, as I was supposed to inherit it eventually. My parents, who were growing older, would have faced difficulties if the house remained in its original condition. The house, once a single-story abode, was transformed into a cozy and welcoming space. Although the cost of the private investigation had eaten into my savings, I had no regrets. I was confident that I could work hard and rebuild my finances. I had aspirations to save up for a car, which would make commuting and shopping more convenient. Of course, if I ever had a boyfriend in the future, I would only use the car for its intended purpose.